try to mess with the ground, run it.
Yeah. We haven't gotten to that, but this time of year, it almost seems like the thing to do. Probably be easier to know that something, Murphy's Law and all that, the air conditioners go down on Sunday.
Yeah, of course.
So, it would be a lot nicer if we knew a little bit in advance. So if I knew on Friday.
Exactly. Well, we've got a big, expensive actual pipe organ. So
Ooh.
you have to keep it, you got to keep the humidity balanced all the time.
Yeah.
So we don't even try to manage it. It's set at like, I don't know, 68 in there 24/7.
Probably the smart thing to do, I'm sure. So we don't have to worry about that, but that's a unique experience. See, I love that about this group, is that we all have such different, unique buildings and things going on, that it's neat to hear what everybody's doing and
Exactly
how they have to manage that. I have ordered a new air conditioner for our main broadcast campus for our lobby, which the air conditioner is on its last legs. It's probably been on its last legs for a long time, and everybody has been a little bit challenging in terms of allowing us to order it. And they finally said, all right, we know it could go down anytime. It's a 31-week lead time.
Yep. Yep, it's four compressors, and we had 2 of them replaced this year. And they didn't take them too long to get those.
Yeah. The compressors tend to be we tend to be able to get those quicker if we just need to replace a compressor. But when we have to replace the entire unit, it's
nuts. Yeah.
bad. So
yeah, I had an electrical switch control panel that went out last year in August, and we replaced it. They got the replacement in April.
Yeah, it takes a long time.
Long time.
Mr. Trickett, how are things in Dallas? Is it warm there?
It is very warm here, yes.
It's a little cloudy today though, Jimmy.
I'm sorry?
Do you have some clouds? We got overcast.
We got a little bit of overcast. It goes away, then it comes back, and it goes away, and it comes back.
Yeah.
So they said today we're supposed to get up, I think it's 103 today, but then it just continues to climb into next week up to 107.
Yeah.
Wow.
But my things tell me it's only 93 here now, so that's not too bad.
Yeah.
It does in October. I'm hoping it's
a little bit better.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anybody else here going to CFX this year? I know James is. Okay, Jimmy.
I am.
Great. It'll be my first time, so I'm excited.
I went the last 2 years. It was good. And from what I've seen, this year is going to be much larger than they've had previously. So,
yeah, I went last year. Didn't plan on going this year. I may change my mind, but last year was more AV and things like that, and that's not what I need. So,
well, there's a group of us doing a facilities collective, so that's why I get to go this time around. Hey, Jeff, how are you doing today? Good. Good to see you.
Good to see everybody here. I've listened to all the HVAC talk. I've got 3 brand new York rooftop units that each have problems right now. And we were told the lead time for the parts was 3 weeks. That was a month and a half ago, and we've still not seen anything. They're less than 2 years old.
That's right. It'll be snowing there soon, so you won't have to worry about it.
Dude, I would love to see that.
All right. Well, I think, Aaron, I think we're still waiting for quite a few more people, but I want to be respectful of people's time.
Yeah,
So
we
people
can go
keep,
ahead and get started.
yeah,
We've got about 19 on right now, so.
awesome. Well, hello, everybody. You get me today, so I don't know. this is what happens. Today is kind of a little bit of a crazy day. It's awesome that there's so many people here today. We're so glad that everybody is here. If you read the newsletter that came out, Tori is out gallivanting in Africa right now, and we're excited for him. He's having a great time. He said he'd send a picture if he could, and I haven't seen anything yet. So hoping he's doing well and having a great time where he is. And Homer is in Las Vegas with a family situation today, but all good. So they're doing his son is going through some testing, and he's asked for our prayers related to that. So I can share that. So unfortunately, he's not able to join us today either. So you get the vice president to manage this call. I thank you in advance for your patience, as mercy as we go through this, and your grace. We don't have very many questions today. We will have prayer here before we get started, but we don't have very many questions today in the queue that were sent in before. So I'm really hoping that we can start, we started having a little bit of conversations about things that we're struggling with in terms of air conditioning and all in these really warm times. But I hope you all might have a question or two. Hopefully there's a reason why you wanted to join this roundtable, and there's maybe something that is just niggling in your brain that you'd love to get everybody just to kind of give you some feedback on, which is exactly what this roundtable is for, an opportunity for us all to just kind of say, hey, to share and hopefully assist each other. So outside of just plain old fellowship. So Mr. James, I thank you so very graciously agreed to open us in a word of prayer. So if you would do that today, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. This Heavenly Father, just come before you. Thank you for all that you do in our lives. Thank you for your son and the ultimate sacrifice dying on the cross for our sins. Thank you for these men and women here that have chose to and heard your calling and just have chosen the facility professional, their hearts and how they want to serve you, Lord. We're just thankful for that, Lord. And we just ask that you oversee our roundtable, and that no matter what, we always put our eyes on you. And it's in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Wade, the question that we have came from you. If you would like to express your question, or if you can remember what it was, and then we'll let people chime in.
About 310,000 square feet in 4 buildings. With the future idea of going to multiple campuses. I know that you do. I know that there are lots of facilities directors that have multiple campuses. So my question was, how do you handle your staff and the maintenance between those different campuses?
Does anybody want to speak to that? I can, but I'll let the rest of the group chime in first.
Lara, I'll be glad to.
Thank you.
We, because of the proximity of a couple of our campuses being 3 and 4 hours away, we let contractors locally take care of that. But the rest of the campuses being all within about 2 hours of where we are, we try and get to them on a regular basis to take care of minor stuff. If it's major stuff, renovations, whole building painting, we're going to farm that out to contractors. But if it's little stuff that they can make a checklist over time, we'll get to them about once every 2 to 3 months. We try. But again, if it's something that they need right away that we can't get to, they're going to sub it out to a local contractor. That's how we handle it. We do the same thing with the cleaning, the deep cleaning. We send out a crew 2 times a year to each of the campuses and just take all of our machinery and equipment here and go take care of their needs, so they're not feeling like the redheaded stepchild that the other campuses do sometimes.
So you don't keep anybody on a permanent or a part-time basis at any of those campuses, even on Sunday?
Only 3 of the other campuses have like facilities people there.
Okay.
And they're mainly there for setup, tear down, cleaning, and some minor stuff. Outside of that, it's the campus pastor that's the facility person, or whoever.
really?
Or whoever they designate as their maintenance person. But most of the time, that's not somebody on staff. That's something that we try to get to.
I know most Sundays, our buildings our oldest building is 20 years old. That's our main sanctuary, main building. And then our second building that's all train rooftop units. Our youth building just came online about a year and a half ago. That's all carrier rooftop units. But I can walk in on a Sunday and bring up my building controls, and I'll spend the next 2 hours getting things back online. I mean, so that's what drove my question for satellite campuses and how that would happen, because a pastor's not going to be able to do that.
Right.
Hey, Scott, how big are your satellite campuses? Are they large? Are they small? Or
so after ours, 1,500s, next 1,200, 1,000, and it kind of goes down from there. But yeah, great question. 3 of those campuses have building controls that I can control from my office.
Right.
The rest of them have a different building control system that I can also control from my office, but it's really up to the campus and the campus staff there to keep up with that. If they have issues and they need somebody called in, if they don't have a relationship with somebody that calls that particular campus home that's in the heating and air business, then we'll reach out and help in that respect. But most of them have somebody that goes to church there on a regular basis that they can reach out to, or that does that stuff on a volunteer basis.
Right.
Lara, I want to speak to the
Yes.
software that you use. If you have a CMMS that allows for an additional field, such as building or campus, and then you treat your all the resources you have. So Scott's talking about he has a team that he sometimes sends over there. If you treat all of your resources like a project management plan, where a resource or a piece of labor you can deploy and give out. And if you have all of it in the same CMMS and you say, I know I have so much labor, I have so many maintenance guys, so many custodians, so many setup, then in your project management plan, I can devote 10% over here this week or 30% over here this week. And you have all those work orders showing what's pending, the long range stuff. But that if you're talking about the daily stuff like HVAC controls, it may be a little different. But I also use a CMMS that has campuses and buildings options in it. And I had at the time separated out and decided just to make it all one campus. And then I can I have hyperlinks in my CMMS to the different products that I use to manage those. So if it's a different product that manages HVAC, the link is in that same software because I'm out there looking at things.
So we do have a facilities person at each of our campuses on Sundays. Each campus has a facility staff person, at least one, depending on the size. They may have a full-time and a part-time. They may have a couple of part-time. It really depends. So each of those facility people report to the campus pastor. So their maintaining of the campuses is on a day-to-day basis. For cleaning and setups and tear downs are the responsibilities of the facilities team that work for the campuses. We have a central team of specialists of 4 people who work in 2 teams, and they go around to each of our campuses on a schedule to handle things that need to be done on a fairly regular basis. So we do try to get to every campus at least once a week. Sometimes, depending on what's going on, if we have major projects, it's a little bit longer than that. Like this summertime, we had some major projects that we did. So we put some non-imperative, non-important maintenance on hold until we get to the fall, when it's a little easier for us to go back around again. So, but we do have a couple of cleaning companies that do come into some of the campuses where they struggle with getting staff for weekend preparation cleaning. But we also have an HVAC, similar to how Chris was talking. We have an HVAC system, HVAC controls that we actually can access from our cell phones, computer, wherever we are at home. So I have an on-call, somebody from my central team is on call for the weekend. So somebody at that technician level is on call every single weekend, so that if something happens that's important, that's above and beyond what the facilities person on site can handle. We've taught them how to recycle air conditioners. We'll walk them through that. We've taught them how to reset breakers, things of that nature. If they can't get a unit back up and running on the weekend using the tools that they already have, they call our on-call person, who looks at it a little more deeply, and then may call an HVAC tech if we need to do so.
So do you have HVAC techs on staff too?
We have people who could work on them, but we don't have HVAC techs on staff
Right.
at this point. I have a position open, and I'm hoping to get one. That would be a blessing, but it's not currently a reality. Anybody else have multiple campuses that would like to speak to how you handle maintenance?
I would say that we mimic pretty much what everyone else said. The only thing that might be a little bit different on allocating bandwidth is we don't base it like on a square footage or PM, where we print out an event setup report every Sunday. And then depending on which site is having the most activity, that's how we'll divvy up. And we wait till our staff meeting. And then we pretty much, we do have people assigned to different sites, but depending on the workload, we might need to, I love using, now that I'm in this industry, rob Peter to pay Paul to, get the job done. So every week's about the same, but every week's about a little bit different.
Another thing that came to my mind, Lara, was that when I worked for Johnson Controls at the JCPenney account, they had 1,100 stores. And so what we did there was we divided stores, if you call them campuses, into groups that we could get a custodial contract that would do so many of the stores as possible. So we had up to 5 custodial contracts out of 1,100 stores, but you're grouping those campuses so your custodial contracts are grouped closer to that place. And then for maintenance, what we ended up doing was we tried to give each store manager, what you might call campus pastor, at least one sort of handyman, do light bulbs. But what we ended up having is a lead tech that would do 2 stores and work for 2 different managers. And then we had a super tech, we called it, that would do, like Lara said, where they might go once a week to every store and touch base with that junior tech and try to help out with any critical stuff. And we called them the super tech, and they would travel up to 5 stores possibly.
That's great. All right. Well, that is the only question that was submitted for today's roundtable. So we have an hour, and we have a little bit more time available to us. So there's so many of you here today, and some of you didn't hear when we first got on, who have just joined in, that this is the opportunity for you to start to ask those questions that are niggling. So when you registered, if you didn't have a question at that time, but if you have been experiencing something over the summer, or if you've have, I'm going to just say, since I get to run today, this is a question, this is an opportunity for questions, to get feedback on. This is also a really great time to ask for prayer requests, or to give praise reports, or to tell what's going on great at your churches. I think that this is an environment that that we struggle with this, that everybody, we can all talk about the challenges that we're experiencing, and, commiserate with each other on that, and hopefully help each other. But I think it's also really great for us to talk about what's going really well where we are. Something that you have, what we call at Grace Family Church, God stories. So if you've got a question, we'd love to hear it. But if you've got a God story that you'd love to share, I think would be a great opportunity for us to do that. We all need some encouragement. Anybody?
Can I go first?
Yes, Scott.
So for those of you that were at the national conference, Tori got up in front of the group and talked about an accident that he and James and I witnessed and were a part of. If you weren't there, the long and the short of it was a couple were putting their boat in the water, and the husband got upset. He was frustrated, angry, which, man, I took away from that. Stay calm, Scott, because things can happen when you get in that state. Well, he was so angry that he ran over his wife with the boat, severed both of her feet to where they were barely hanging on by just tendons. So, not to be gory at lunchtime here, we all prayed. We all signed a card for this young lady, or this older woman, and we did not know her name because of HIPAA regulations. The DNR agent who was presiding over the boat ramp could not share that information with us. So I used the church and the pastor trump card when I got back and said, hey, we just want to reach out. Well, he gave the daughter our contact information. She reached out to me, and I went and subsequently visited with her and her mother, Helena. Y'all, you talking about a God moment? I got chills when I walked in there, sat down, and watched her wiggle her toes. And that was not a possibility in my mind, or Tori or James' mind, seeing what happened when it happened. We just didn't think that was going to happen. Matter of fact, the DNR agent told us that she was going to have one of her legs amputated the day we were at the conference. So praise report is that she was wiggling her toes. Her daughter said that within a year, she'll be up and walking. She will not be walking like she did before, but she will be up and walking. And I just, continue to lift that family up in prayer, because the husband has got to have some guilt associated with this accident, and just pray that, their marriage not be harmed because of it, but just praise God that she's potentially going to be able to walk again, when, again, there was just no option in our mind that would ever happen for her again. Thank you all for, taking time to pray for this family, and praise God.
We praise God that you guys were there, that you were able to pray over her there. The prayers of righteous man effective much. So it was definitely a God moment that you all were there. I know that was a tough experience to be there and to be a part of it, but God had you properly placed at just the right time. So
Absolutely.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Baldwin.
Thank you so much. Good to see everybody. Got on a little late. Sorry about that. But I did want to publicly thank Lee Robinson for sending me all the information he sent me a couple of weeks ago regarding the secretary's position. It's quite a bit of information. I do appreciate that. I'll be reaching out to you, Lee, very soon. Thank you so much.
Actually, Laura, I'd like to ask you a question for the people that actually went to the national conference, and just asking them maybe some of their takeaways from what was good, what was not good from it, in their experience.
Great question. It's okay. You can say the bad, the good, bad, and the ugly. It's all right. We're thick-skinned. It's all right.
Well, I'll say this was my wife and I this was our first time going. We had a great time. We got to meet some people. We got to spend some time with some of the old timers that have been there a lot. I can't think of anything that I would change. I mean, I've got one experience to go on, but it was a great time.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. If anybody has any ideas or thoughts, we'll be getting together for the first meeting in the not too distant future to start the conversations about the next conference. And there's already been some conversations related to that, but we'll have some dedicated time to that pretty soon. So your feedback, even if you didn't get a chance to do it in the survey or just something that you think would be interesting that you might have thought about after the fact, we'd love to hear that as well.
Yeah, I say we keep it in the mountains and keep it near North Carolina.
You were looking when your camera was on, Chris, you were looking a little more comfortable than you have in past roundtables. So I think you're enjoying some mountain outdoor time right now.
No, we helped start a church, and that would be a God moment. We've tried to plant instead of have campuses, and so we've done some revitalizations where there's a little church that just got to 5 years from when we sort of did a restart with them. They were a sort of a dying church, a lot of older folks, no kids there, and they needed help. And so we've gone in there, and we had their 5-year anniversary with the pastor that we sent over there. They've got kids at bounce houses, and we took our bounce houses over there. This is our Go Serve Week, where we try to get our community to go out and serve. We are building a used playground right now over there today. I've been over there yesterday and today. And so this is my lunch break. I came to the house to heat up my food. They're closer to my house than the church I work at is. And so my crew is taking a lunch break. So I'm on the back porch because I had to heat my stuff up in the microwave. But that playground is missing bolts and screws, and it's going to be a bit of a nightmare. So it's a big one. And, it's 40 by 40, and we're trying to put it all back together right now.
Oh, I don't envy that project. Any other conference feedback? God stories? Question?
I'll throw a question out if we're moving on past the conference.
Anything is open and available right now. So go right ahead, Jason.
One thing that I've struggled with, I'll be going on actually, I just had my anniversary, so I'm going on my 3rd year doing this job. And one thing that I'm trying to, it's one of my annual goals is to build a facility volunteer program. And so we've named it a cute name, Building Love. It's a double entendre. But what I've struggled with is that I have a decent sized team, but they're busy. And so it takes, it's kind of like the notion of, if your plumber comes and you're like, well, if you help me, it'll cost you $100. But if you let me do it, it'll cost you 50, because it takes more time to teach people and get there. But I also have been to a lot of our sister churches and things like that, where they have a vibrant volunteer team that are vacuuming floors and wiping stuff down and taking trash out. And, I've seen some where they're doing stuff they probably shouldn't be doing, electrical and, even HVAC stuff. But the premise behind it is that they were able to get this like machine going and then somehow make it self-sustainable. And so I'm having trouble I have plenty. I've got literally probably 25 volunteers that want to do something right now that are brand new, hot, ready to go. But then I know that if I invite them in and then they have a bad experience, not only did I ruin them for a volunteer position, but they might not like the church, so it's like, I want to make sure to be able to love on them appropriately, but I can't, lose the bandwidth of like, hey, I've got actual functions that are my primary role. Although I know that this is super important, and volunteers are something that, one, they're affordable, but two, they might even be more sustainable than your own staff. I mean, people come and go for various reasons. So I was curious to hear about some of the growing pains of organizations that have started a volunteer program for their facilities, and especially things that are going well that can be, you know, that you would say, hey, I would duplicate this. These are best practices or something like that.
That's a great question, Jason. I'm excited to hear from anybody who has feedback on that as well.
I'll jump in on that one. We do a twofold approach, maybe threefold, but two are really more effective. We have a third Saturday work day, which is all over our facility. And we just bring our volunteers in. The stated goal of it is to build community. Work gets done in that process, it's great. So it's an opportunity to love on those volunteers at that time, and to like, in some of the conversations I've heard on those Saturdays has been amazing. Just some guys getting together, or you know, and chatting while they're painting a wall or doing something like that. And then I've got several retired tradesmen who are willing to come in on a, like today is my Larry day. And so I have a Larry list that I write for every Tuesday, and he comes in. A lot of times we'll work together, but sometimes he'll just go and work on his own. And so I have days where I've got a David day and a Larry day. And so if you've got some guys like that can come in, it's been really beneficial. Sometimes we'll have time to go out and get lunch afterwards and, you know, just hang out. So I find both of those to be very useful and kind of life-giving too, because I work by myself. So to have this group of volunteers that can come around, it's been really good.
That's awesome.
I would probably interject 2 points. One is you might want to find a senior volunteer or some volunteer that can be your volunteer leader. So especially if you're doing like cleaning or whatever, that person could coordinate the other volunteers to take some of that off of your plate, so you're not having to do that all the time. And then the second point would be, make sure you don't have volunteers up on ladders and stuff, because that's a huge liability issue that could ruin your church if you're not careful.
Yeah, you have to, like he said about ladders, you have to treat volunteers like actual employees, and you have to be prepared for workers' comp and anything of that nature. And that still can be, as you said, Jason, inexpensive. I mean, there's still a cost to having volunteers do work in your building. They still might have to fall under all the same state regulations for safety. But I think you have to also treat them like employees in how you show them respect, how you honor them, how you take them to lunch. You give them a facilities t-shirt or whatever is necessary. You love on them. And like Steve said, you have that list ready. You treat them with respect, like you value what they do. Getting the volunteers I need, and I see other churches sometimes have a lot more of them. Like Doug Rogers in Houston had 50 guys show up to mow an entire Frisbee golf course. And so sometimes it's really own that leadership that shows, hey, you're really an employee here. We just don't pay you, and we love you, and we want you here. And here's safety training. They include them in safety training, include them in discussions and all staff meetings. And so really treat them like employees, I think.
I've had volunteer team now for 15, 16 years. So they have rotated. I inherited it. And the best thing I think I did was treat it like they were friends first. Come on in, let's sit down and have some fellowship time. Let's have some coffee and donuts in the morning. And I didn't rush them off to work. I let them work at their pace, and they're all retired guys. So at one point I had 12 guys. Right now I'm down to 4. The other thing that I learned is give them the work that they want to do instead of giving them work that they don't want to do. I had guys that said, don't put a drill in my hand because I won't do you any good. And I've had guys say, I don't want to paint. So I never let them paint because I don't want to chase them away. If they don't want to clean, they won't clean. I find myself picking up after them a lot more than sometimes it's more work to have them than it is to do it myself. But it's so beneficial for the church, for them, for their value. Somebody mentioned they're retired. All my guys are retired. at one point I had a guy that was 85 years old still climbing on a ladder and insisted on doing it. But you have to watch that stuff, like Chris said, you can't. So I buy them lunch every day. They stay as long as they want. I make sure I have all the materials that they need for that day's project, or even like right now I have 6 days worth of work sitting on my workbench waiting for them. They come once a week, every Wednesday, and they love it. They spend 45 minutes having coffee in the morning, just talking about anything. We talk about scripture, we talk about life, we talk about struggles, we talk about just everything that they're dealing with. And that's first and foremost. I stop what I'm doing, I shut my computer off, and I just sit with them for 45 minutes. And I'm in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm wasting an hour here. I could be getting something done, but they're the most important thing that day for me. And all I do is run around all day, chasing them around, it's like herding cats, right? Making sure they're doing what you want, making sure they're doing it the way you want it. They are employees of the church at that time that they're on the ground. So they need to do things the way you like them done, not the way they want them done, because ultimately you have to answer for the work that's getting done. But they appreciate that. They appreciate that structure, that time of fellowship. So loving on them is, I think, the key thing, and having things ready for them is the most important. Don't ask a bunch of volunteers to show up and then, I got to send you to the store to go buy everything you need. They don't want to do that. They don't want to do that. So it's been great for me. I love having them here, and I continue to look for retired guys. I have a harder time doing the weekend stuff, where a lot of guys are better at doing the weekend stuff, but that gives them a sense of purpose too, because now they're finished with their jobs. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to move on to. So that's been the way I've approached it. And I'm happy buying them lunch. At first, the church was like, no, you can't be buying them food. I'm like, you don't know how much money they're saving you every day. So
Exactly.
I'm going to
It's
buy
not
them
worth
lunch. And if it's cost me $50 well spent. Right. And they've stopped questioning that, because they've done, and I literally mean of work through our renovation and do all the demo work. When we start a new campus, they're doing all that stuff. So if I look at my budget over the 15 years, if I've spent 10 grand on food for them, I've spent a lot, but they've done hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of work for the church and are happy to do it. So love on them first. That's the first and foremost. Even if you don't have
Great
work, come on
investment.
in, let's have some fellowship time, work for a couple hours and send them on their way.
Great investment.
Yeah.
Jake, I think you had some feedback. I think you've been trying to.
Yeah, I mean, Frank hit the nail on the head. I think once you find their passion, and that's what I was going to say, look for what they're passionate about. And then once you can find that, then you almost don't need to herd the cat so much. Like if you can find that, I've got a guy that loves the flower bed. Like he takes care of all of our stuff, and he just does it, and it looks great. And of course, you look over it and you make sure it's to your standard, and of course, you have those conversations. But man, I really think when you can find what people are passionate about, it makes everything much easier, and it makes their volunteer time not feel like volunteer time. Because I'm telling you, if I can build something, I'll lose track of time, and most people do that when they find something they're passionate about. They lose track of time. They don't consider it volunteer. They just consider, man, I had a great day, helping the church out, doing things that I love. So just be aware of that. Be watching them. Be looking for, they'll show you. Just asking questions. They'll definitely talk about it. So.
Thank you. I think that's one of the ways that for some of us who have some larger congregations, this is one of those really neat ways to make a large church feel small. You can almost be a small group type of atmosphere for them, a time to get together and to tackle something. And it also helps them feel as if the church is then their church. It's now, this is my church, not just the church I go to. This is my church, and they have an investment in that. And then, as we've already said, thousands of dollars can be saved by having that kind of those people who have that heart for the church and can really invest in it in that way with their time and their treasures and their talents. So.
Yeah, and like Chris said, making them feel a part of the staff, inviting them to staff outing things that are happening on those days. We do that every Wednesday, and they love taking breaks, right? So they're happy to take a break at 10 o'clock in the morning. They're happy to take a break at, sorry, I hit something here.
We can
I
still
got,
hear you.
Yeah, I got a phone call in the process. Teams, gotta love it. Still gotta learn how to use my computer. But yeah, they love taking breaks with the staff and interacting with the staff. They feel like they're a part of the team, and it just reinforces the church structure even more.
All right, we have a question. I have an I could hear you, Jake. I'm going to answer your question real quick. We could hear you. You were a little muffled, but we think we made it. So thank you for that. John Bernard has a question, and we can't hear him, so I'm going to read it here. We are considering replacing our PTO roof membrane with white EPDM or seal coating over our existing PTO with liquid silicone membrane. Does anyone have any recommendations with either options? And he's in Littleton, Colorado at Red Rocks Church. Anybody got feedback?
I would say check the warranty and then stick it to them. So if they claim it thing would be okay for 10 years, for instance, we did a coating and he said they will come back at 7 years, put another layer on and extend the warranty another 10 years or something. So I'd really look hard at the warranty.
Right.
Chris, how do you fight that though? I got a situation where I have let's see, 6 years ago, we put on a chiller and we had to put on a new roof on there, and I got bubbling, really big bubbles. And so they gave us a 15-year labor and parts warranty. Well, they brought in Firestone and to check the membrane. They're like, well, the membrane's working, but the heat from, I guess Wisconsin's really hot. Evidently the heat from the roof made a bubble. And so they're saying, well, we won't charge you for the outside layer, but Firestone saying that we need to do this. I'm like, I didn't see an asterisk next to the 15-year parts and labor. Like, so how do you fight that without having to get, lawyers involved?
Yeah, the other thing that came to my mind was the due diligence on that company, their history, their quality. Do they carry enough of their own liability to know that company is going to not be hard to work with in those 15, like you just said, 7 years? Good point.
You might check with Tori too. He's out there in Denver. He might be able to have some good information on that type of stuff. He's got a big building.
And you might want to check with your local or state regulations too. A lot of states like South Carolina require contractors to have surety bonds, so that if in your case 7 years down the road they're not willing to do anything, well, then you go back to the state and the state will intervene on your part to make sure that contractor does what they're supposed to, or they'll draw on that surety bond.
Mm-hmm. Great feedback. Any other thoughts on that?
Did you try local manufacturers rep on that at all? So not Firestone directly, but the distributorship that sells the Firestone product. They're the ones that are usually standing behind that stuff. And then they can fight because they're the big dogs buying the product and selling it to the little dogs, right? So you should check into that.
We all have our own cultures, and the culture here at this church is very conservative, and we tend to trust our vendors. And it doesn't help having the new guy coming in and saying we should be RFPing stuff out. And so I make enough waves as it is. So I'm trying not to continue in that approach because it hasn't done me very well. But sometimes you got to do the right thing.
Well, this is the instant where your value is shown here. You can go back to your church and say, look, we go through these processes so we don't run into this problem the next time around. How do we, that's how you approach it, right? So that's where they're relying on you to take care of the building. That's your responsibility at this point. So you can do your due diligence and still talk to the manufacturer's rep, talk to the roofing guy and say, all right, what can we do to correct this? What's the problem? And take all that information back to the board, let them decide. Ultimately, it's their decision, but As long as you do your due diligence, that's all you can do.
I can totally understand that situation, Jason. We grew fairly quickly, but a lot of our vendors have been close to the church for a long time. And just the last few years, that's been challenging as we've grown. So, getting to the point of going, we really need to spend some time looking at vendors and just checking. Sometimes that's the way I can approach it. Is just I'm not saying we don't need to go with that person, but we should check a few. We should, let's do what's the right thing to do to be good stewards of what God has entrusted us with. And ultimately, if the right answer is to continue, and even like Frank said, the board's going to make the decision about who you're going to go with. But if you've done everything that you could do, and you with a good, clean conscience can say that you've done what you felt led to do and you presented and provided, then you can rest easy in how you proceed. So even if they make a decision that overrides what you think might be the best one. So. Anybody else
Well,
have any
it's-
questions? No, go ahead.
It's my experience where I'm at, that if I do my due diligence, if I do my RFQs and I get the quotes that I need, and I feel comfortable with the quotes, and then making a best value judgment, that I have a pretty good track record of getting mine approved.
Yeah.
Sometimes not so much. It just depends.
Yeah.
But it depends. I've also found that if I present them with phases instead of one big dollar amount, if I can phase it in, I have a better chance of getting it approved. Roofing projects are tough because everybody has their own products and everybody wants to rep for everybody's is the best. And they'll all come in at a relatively average amount. I mean, it's hard to, roofing projects are hard because you just got to go with do your research and go with what is you feel is the best product for your I like TPO, and we do TPO here. So
well, I have a question for the group. If we don't have any others for the moment, I could give you guys a few more minutes to think about any other questions. So recently, there's been a little bit of a change here. So I have assumed the security role, which typically was not in my position before a few weeks ago. So I'm interested to hear how many of you might have a security person on staff versus contracting with somebody who oversees your security, if that's the way that you do that, and pros and cons of what you've experienced. So would love to get, and before you answer that, John says, thanks everybody for your input on the roofing. He appreciates that. So, so any thoughts, any feedback on security, if that happens to fall within your realm in facilities?
well, here at Crossroads, we have a director for security.
On
He's on staff, full-time staff. He's retired. I believe 32 years with Grand Prairie Police. He's an incredible security specialist. We have a rather large security budget here. We have on Sundays and special events, we have uniformed police on site in the parking lots, in the buildings. There's at least 2 in every building on Sunday. We also have our own security staff that is here during the days, and they go home in the evenings and the gates are locked. But yeah, we have a pretty robust security operations here.
Thank you.
Yeah, ours is sort of a hybrid. It can be a bit confusing. Our security team is all volunteer, uh, comprised of a lot of active members of the local law enforcement community as well as retirees. Um, we we make ourselves aware of all those that are members who are carrying on any given Sunday, and they are sort of informal members of the security team, but because we want to make sure that they are not an intimidating or frightening presence. They fall under the control of guest services, the guest services ministry. So there's sort of an overlap between my department and guest services. I manage all the infrastructure, the cameras, access controls, alarms, and so forth. And I manage training those guys on the use of the hardware, how to access cameras and what to do with all the alarms and access controls. It is a little bit confusing. We are kind of in a transition period. And who knows how long that transition period will last. You know how growth happens. Sometimes it happens in spurts, and sometimes it feels like you're dragging an extra limb. But we are to the point where I feel like we're probably going to end up like you just mentioned, Greg, and I'm sure several others, where we're going to have someone who is on staff who is covering both sides of that and sort of that umbrella, because it's becoming more of a monster than that sort of ambiguous overlap can really handle.
Thank you,
We've
Jeff.
got, the thing we used here is, we've got to be careful using the word security team. In Illinois, that carries a licensing with it. So you got to check what your local laws are. So we call them the safety team, and we actually call them shadows because their responsibility is only in the sanctuary. Now that falls under me, so I had to go through security training. I don't have security background. That's not my thing. And through all the training that I've done, I've learned that we shy away from the word security because of the licensing that comes along with it. So if you say, "Oh, I'm the security team," and you have an incident, then the attorneys can actually say, "Well, are you licensed? Are you trained? Are you certified in security?" So those are words, but they're very strong words. So you got to be careful how you use them first and foremost. We have some retired police officers. We have some active duty police officers. We have retired military. They're on this safety team, and their responsibility is primarily what happens in the sanctuary. And whoever's up on the platform first and foremost, and then the congregation. And then what we do for the rest of the congregation is we have a hired police officer. We hire the local township to come in with a police officer off duty, but uniformed. And he hangs out all day long in the lobby. He'll roam around. He'll follow the offering when it goes back into the safe room. And he has a presence, and people feel very secure seeing a police officer. And we all did the training with Tim and with Mark, and Tim always had a good point. You don't want to stand there like I have one guy that loves standing in the lobby with his arms folded, and then he's back up against the wall, and he's the tough guy, and nobody wants to approach him.
Yeah.
So we've tried staying away from that stuff. And the other thing is, Jeff, you talked about concealed carry. Anybody who's carrying that I know, I tell them, make sure you tell the police officer if you're carrying that day. Because the last thing I want is the officer rushing into the sanctuary and seeing 10 guys with a gun pulled. and not know who to take care of, right? So they all know that they have to tell the officer that morning if they're carrying, so he knows who's on their side and if he needs to pull from them to help him in whatever the situation. By God's grace, we've never had an incident come close to that. Not even a disruption in the sanctuary. The worst thing that we've ever is somebody faint because they didn't take their meds or dehydration or something like that, or elderly. So, but we've had issues out in the lobby that we've had to deal with. We've got a lot of homeless, so we got to deal with. We got a gypsy group that loves to panhandle right outside the doors and bothers everybody, and especially the old ladies. And so we got our share of that stuff. But yeah, be careful on the words that you use. And if you're training them, make sure you're training them to deal with the police officer. Once the biggest step that we made was hire a local PD. I think that was the best thing we could do.
Thank you. For
Well, the security word is critical because we do call ours a security team. They are all licensed.
Yeah, see, that's important.
So those are good points, Frank. I actually attended a seminar a couple of weeks ago, and it was about risk avoidance and liability and stuff like that. One thing that the speaker had mentioned is if you hire a police officer, he's a 1099 person that's working for the church. If you hire a security service, they're hiring their own employees to come in and work in your church. And that's, in some instances, provides one more layer of liability protection from you, because if something goes sideways, there's the security officers work for that other company.
Right. That's why we hire the police officer from the village, right? So it's the village's responsibility. Yeah.
That is the village. So here in Texas and in Dallas, they're 1099 employees of the church. So they're working for us, even though they're off duty and they're wearing their uniforms and all that. So it's a liability juggle that we have, and in the Catholic diocese where I am, and they want us to use off-duty police officers, period, because they want the training that the police officers have. That's what our insurance company says.
Mm-hmm.
We cross 3 different counties, and each county is different. But one of them is 1099, and the other 2 we specifically pay the law enforcement entity. So we have a mix.
Well, piggybacking off of that, yeah, we're required to be licensed too by the state and renew that license yearly for our entire security team, whether they carry or not. But are you the security the other 98% of the time that the church is open? Because our team, I tell them, you're security the other 90+% of the time the church is open. You got to keep your eyes open for things. Don't assume or don't have your arms crossed like one gentleman, but we have to be smart and keep our eyes open. So are your teams empowered, or are you empowered to do that as well?
It falls on me. So anytime there's an issue in the church during the week and I'm here, I'm the first person they call. They don't even call 911, and they let me make that decision, which again, I have no training in law enforcement or security whatsoever. I mean, I've done it. I have had training. I shouldn't say no training, because I've specifically gone I've done the Alice program, and it's a phenomenal training program. But I would not consider myself an expert by any means in security. So any training that I get, I soak it up, because I'm the point person. I don't even consider my staff. They're like, "Oh, you and your staff, you're supposed to watch over that." No, my staff are custodians. They're not the security, but that's what they expect. So yeah, it's hard.
If I can chime in real quick on the 1099 security situation. If you're employing 1099s as your security guards, whether they're off-duty police officers or whatnot, you should be requiring 1099s to carry their own LLC with their own liability insurance, because otherwise they're really hanging themselves out to dry as a 1099. And if something falls onto their liability, they're going to get sued personally. They're going to be taking that account's not going to go to an insurance company or a carrier or anything else. They're going to get sued personally. So if you have 1099s working as your employee or working at your church as your security with not an LLC or their own liability insurance, um, that that should be corrected ASAP, because otherwise that individual, although they're trying to do well, maybe do an off-duty police officer, whatever the case may be, but there's no liability. So there you're going to get reverted to being sued by the church because you're going to carry your umbrella policy.
Food for thought.
It'd be the same as any contractor that comes in. Any 1099 contractor that comes in, you need to have their own liability insurance, their own workers' comp insurance, et cetera, because if they come in and get hurt on your dime and they have no protection, the legality falls back onto the entity, which is going to be the church organization.
Agreed.
We have a step 2 that we require of anybody that carries, whether you're a staff or volunteer, that you're insured through United States Carry Conceal Association for a $2 million policy. That's not going to say they're not going to go after the church as well, but at least there's some layer of protection for the church to begin with. And then, we as staff, I do not have any intentions of pulling a weapon on anybody. As long as there's an officer around, I'm going to point to him and say, "You do your job. I'm gonna get out of the way."
I spoke to a church as well that said that their volunteers wear badges, lanyards with badges, and the ones that they know that carry, they have a different colored lanyard, and they let the officers know that, so that should something happen, they are familiar with, they know that a person with a lanyard is somebody who with a certain colored lanyard might be carrying and is one of the good guys for all practical purposes. So.
I like that idea, the different colored lanyards. Our security team, we have a central security room where all our security monitors are. And they put in there to show who is on duty and who is not at any given time. And just like it, in a lot of old workplaces where you used to have the magnet to show who was in and who was out, these are different colored magnets to show who is or is not carrying. But once you're out and about in the facility, you can't associate a face with a magnet. I like the idea of the lanyards. I'm going to have to bring that up to our security volunteer leader because
yeah, I thought that was a neat one, because your officers may change during the week, but from week to week. So if you have the opportunity to at least go, hey, these guys have this colored lanyard on, that they know that. So that helps with if somebody forgets to indicate, that they're carrying. So. All right, well, I'll go back to asking going back to asking 2 critical questions, hopefully, and see if we get any additional feedback to that. And then I know that we have, yes, there's a new vendor on the roundtable with us today who I'd love to give just a couple of minutes to share a little bit about themselves. But before we do that, I want to go back to James's question and just see if anybody's thought anything more or come up with any positive, constructive, whatever feedback related to the conference for those of you who are attended, or even if you didn't attend, if outside of budgetary reasons or time constraints, if there was something specific, a specific reason why you didn't attend that you would love to see about the conference that would help turn that tide for you. We would love to see more people attend and be at that conference. It's just an amazing opportunity for us all to be in fellowship. So I've got that question. So does anybody else have any feedback related to that?
I mean, I didn't attend, and it was for budgetary reasons, but for good ones. So in our fiscal year, June through July, I already went to the certification training. So all said and done with travel, lodging, and stuff like that, that's a little under probably $2,000 right there. And so to double that up, I mean, I had to basically put off the May training because that would have been another 2,000 in the same fiscal year. So it's just if there was, something to, help folks that are trying to do the certification and go, but again, like everything costs money. And you said besides budgetary, but it wasn't just like the church is saying, hey, you're spending too much money on training. We have HVACs that need to be fixed. It was just that doubling up. And then it would be, nice. And like, I'm trying to think, like, we have the space here, but we wouldn't do it. But lodging gets so expensive. Like if there was a way to, have some type of lodging that was not a hotel or something that, just, I mean, I'm sure I could have camped out in the Smokies. But even nowadays, you might as well just get a room because, a tent site is super expensive anyways.
It can be. It
So,
can be.
Homer camped, I think, didn't he?
Yes,
well,
he did.
okay, not all of us are Homer material. Okay, so
Thank God for Homer. I think a few people camped actually, or at least at some point it did during the course of that. That's great feedback, Jason. Thank you. That's actually, it's something I've thought about. So I appreciate your bringing that up. Any other feedback about the conference? I actually just got I have a hand raised, so I know somebody else has a question, but
I'll jump in real quick. This was my first conference and I had very low expectations because I was like, well, what are national vendors going to look like, or vendors in this region? So, but I am currently working with Power of Clean Energy to fix my issues with our VRF system. So hopefully, if that goes through, I think I can go to any conference I want to after that because it's going to save us a ton of money. So it was a great benefit to that. So I think that was really good.
that's really encouraging. It's great to hear that our vendors, that you had a great experience and selected a vendor that was there, but also that our vendors are getting some business back from that experience also. All right, Scott, you had a question. Oh, and
Mute. Okay, so does everybody on the call, do you do monthly fire drills? And well, I guess my question is, are you doing monthly fire drills and how does that work for you?
do you have a school, Scott?
We do.
Okay, so you do monthly fire drills because you have a school.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Which
we don't
is-
have a school, so we don't do monthly fire drills. That said, we just started doing daycare for our staff. So I'm guessing that will be something that as we go through our full licensure process, that'll be part of our process. So James shook his head yes, though. So James, do you have any feedback on that?
Can you hear me? All right.
Yes.
I think I figured it out. All right. Yeah, well, I have two schools, and of course, in the state of Texas, we're required to do monthly fire drills because of the schools. So what we do as a staff usually is when we do that is the staff comes down wherever they're at and assists the schools on getting babies and stuff like that. So we have a child care facility that has kids that are like anywhere from I think 2 months, on up to 6th grade. So of course the 6th graders and stuff are at school, but anyways, we assist them in helping getting everybody vacated and out of the building for the drills. So that's how, as the church staff, we interact with the fire drills.
My problem is not necessarily the preschool or the daycare that we have. They know what to do. They get their kids out and in a proper order within the time. It's the staff that won't leave, or they're texting me, hey, is this a fire drill? Yeah, but it's required that you vacate the building. And you can't go outside and sit in the chair that's right next to the door that you just left out of, So it's frustrating.
That's what I mean, Scott, is to avoid that. If you're telling your staff like, hey, treat it as real and go assist, it gives them a task to do that they're actually getting out of the building by assisting the school.
All right. Well, that's a very good point. Thank you.
Yeah.
So our HR director, we don't have a school, but our HR director does semi-annual fire drills for the staff. And she's 14 years Army, And so when she says, get out of the building, you get out of the building.
That's smart.
We had a bad fire panel that would go off periodically, and we had a pastor on a Sunday morning tell everybody, oh, it's a false alarm, without knowing it was a false alarm, and had the congregation just stay in the sanctuary. Talk about frustration with staff. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a school here and they manage it all themselves. The principal takes care of it, so it's no big deal. My last church I was at, we had a preschool, and I had to be involved because I was the one that had to call the alarm company and tell them to test and all that. And then the staff, every now and then I would not tell the staff about it and make them evacuate too. Sometimes I would warn them and say, you don't have to leave, it's just for the kids. So there was kind of a mixed bag there, but if I didn't tell them about it, I expected them to get out of the building. So speaking of Sundays, we always threaten to have it on a Sunday and make the pastor empty the church, but that never went over. You could never talk him into doing that.
I'm fairly certain I'd get fired if I tried that. So. All right, Mr. Lanzetta, did you have a question? Oh, you're muted. There we go.
Yeah, I apologize. I was been jumping back and forth between a couple meetings. But I just wanted to reiterate back about the conference. The conference was wonderful. The only thing I had problems too, to reiterate the fact that the expense of the trip, and this was the closest it's been. I'm in Pennsylvania, so this was the closest it's been to me since it's been happening, because it's usually in Colorado or Texas or out west, and that's a next big expense for travel and lodging and whatnot. And I was able to combine this with a little bit of a family vacation and make it happen. But I also, you were talking about security, and I missed some of that. But I'm also a member of the national FBSN, the Faith-Based Security Network, which is a tremendous resource. I think all you guys should check into, because I do both. I have to do the safety and security part as well as the facilities part, and that's like I said, a tremendous resource. But they also have a conference that I wanted to go to, which was in Tennessee this year. But just budget wise and finance wise, I can't expect the church to to pay for that, and so I had to choose. I chose this conference and it was great. The only thing I wasn't at the hotel, so like I missed the devotional. It was supposed to start at 7 and it started earlier than that, and I got there and I felt like I was missing out on things because it didn't start at the time that it was really scheduled to start. And so I mean, but they're minor things, but overall I would say it was great. It was I learned a lot, and I thought it was a good experience.
Great, thanks so much for that feedback. We'll definitely take it.
Yeah, I guess that would be the hotel would be the other thing that I would think about. If we could all be in the same hotel. I mean, Colorado, I think we were all pretty much in the same hotel, but clearly we had to split out for valid reasons this time. So hopefully Grand Rapids is got a better hotel or bigger hotel.
My biggest complaint was that Buc-ee's opened on Monday after we left. Like Monday, the largest Buc-ee's in the world.
I drove past 3 others on the way home, so I'm okay.
I didn't want to deal with any of that traffic in that insane intersection of 57 different interstates to get to Buc-ee's. No, thank you.
It was a little crazy.
I will say though, in terms of feedback for the conference, each time, we've all talked about, the expense here, and, it is a little bit expensive. I have a specific number for my training budget every year, and both all 2 conferences that I've been to so far have been over that. But despite my trepidation, because I'm always really concerned, oh man, am I getting the practical bang for the buck that I need to? Is it worth going? And I talked to my boss, who fortunately is the former facility manager, so he understands the position and the needs of the position, and he understands the importance of the fellowship as well. And it's just the fellowship alone
If we didn't have any other practical applications, if we didn't have any vendors that could serve practical needs, if we didn't have any training that served practical applications, it would still be worth it just for the fellowship and worship alone. And that, all that being said, I did walk away with some practical applications. And I've talked with Gen X Security about, and eSpace both, about integrations with my controls and event scheduling. So, you know, all around it was worth it. You know, I also am not Homer and, you know, couldn't do the camping, although I might have if I had thought about it. But it was definitely worth it either way. And so it's probably going to enable me to increase my training budget, hopefully, for next fiscal year.
Thank you.
So real quick, Laura. So I just got back from the TCN, which is basically the old NACBA, the business administrators, the purse strings of our budgets, guys. And so like they had almost like 500 people at their conference. Of course, since you're holding the purse strings, you know, it makes it easier for you to budget for you to go to your conferences. So that's what I want to kind of talk about, is like, if that's who's over your budget and stuff, like get with them, find out if they're going to those conferences, and then kind of use that as like, hey, you're going to your conference for a reason. I need that as well. You know, maybe they'll open that purse string up a little bit more once they realize and understand that. Because most of the time the facility manager is stuck staying at home holding down forts when the rest of staff goes to their retreats or whatever it is that they're going to. So if you address like, hey, look, I need this for my sanity as well, and get away, and like Jeff just said, the fellowship behind going to our conference, you know, it's priceless. I mean, just like Scott mentioned that story. I mean, the reason why that story exists is, of course, God, but it also is because NACFM brought all three of us together to where we have more than just fellowshipping with and a sisterhood, you know, with other facility like-minded professionals. So, you know, just talk to your guys that's holding the purse strings behind things, and just see how that plays out for you guys, you know, and reiterate, you know, how important this is to you guys going to these conferences. So my 2 cents. So
Awesome. Scott Hammond threw out in the chat, if you didn't notice it, a link to where Chris Barron was really good at throwing out links, and I did not do a good job of that this time, but Scott did it, which is awesome, to a badge for security, by the way, that's out there if you want to take a look at that. I think, Scott, we've got time maybe for one more question, and then we'll have a couple of minutes to have and then we'll have Hal. Scott, I think you had one more question for us.
I did. So do you do anything special to accommodate seniors in your buildings? And the reason I ask is we've had a couple challenges here recently where they've had some falls and whatnot, and they've asked us to be responsible for them. And I pushed back, especially when it came to fire drills. They wanted us to escort them out the building. And I said, you know what? I've got 225,000 square feet I need to clear. So you're going to have to make do. But do y'all do anything special for the seniors to kind of accommodate them?
Go ahead, Calvin. You would? Oh, I thought you had. Okay, you didn't have anything. All right. We do not. I have a couple of wheelchairs, but I don't have anything other than that. So,
I mean, we have basically a whole service devoted to, I mean, it's called traditions, because you can't call it old people congregation, but it's generally who goes there, or folks who like really old school liturgies and, you know, hymnals for worship. But those are much comfier chairs. We've had complaints that our other chairs were not good for the cushion, you know, and so we brought in cushioner chairs. So we have a couple hundred of those that are special just for that venue. We haven't had any fires, so I don't know if I need to escort people, but we also have wheelchairs on every floor, and they're ready, available, and they're in different sizes too, because so are people. But other than that, and then we always have a care person designated to that venue just in case something happens.
Yeah, I'm not so much worried about when we have services. We have plenty of people here. It's during the week that, you know, the fire marshal comes in and says, pull that fire pull over there. And I can't go to the seniors and escort 30 of them down the stairs. We've got to clear the building. So just trying to figure out a creative way that we could help get them out. Yes, one of the things we're going to do is make sure wheelchairs are available. We do have the striker chairs to get them down the stairs in the event of somebody that cannot walk or is in a wheelchair walker. So
Well, you know, they have those cribs for the nurseries for the infants. Maybe we can make big cribs and file them all in a crib, push them out.
Oh, goodness.
I tell you though, the worst thing is that you don't realize how important your elevator is until it's down for a certain amount of time. Like we had one that was down for like 3 weeks, and it felt like 3 years. Because every person that needed it that's when they show up to church.
Hey Scott, have you tried to relocate the seniors to ground floor rooms to meet in? Is that possible?
we do for their big events, but they get together once a week to exercise, and the only place that has carpet is upstairs. And of course, that's when the last fire drill came down, and that's when the last incident happened. So yes, just trying to find some creative ways, but yeah, putting them on the ground floor definitely is a help.
Maybe put some carpet in downstairs somewhere.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for all that great discussion today. I hope you have, we'll do a couple more things before we finish here, so please don't get off quite yet. But I hope you have enjoyed this time, and I would highly recommend that if you think about it, to be prepared for the next one. I'm going to hold on to give you that date in a couple of minutes here. But in preparation for the next roundtable, I hope you have found this beneficial. I would ask that you be thinking about that. Think about that little question that's niggling there that you'd love to get some feedback on from everybody here on the group. And also be thinking about over the next couple of months what we've got in terms of God stories of something really. I'd love to hear that. That's really encouraging for all of us, not just the board members who are present on this call, but I think it's really great when we get to hear how God is moving in our churches and what's going on, not just at the conference, but at these opportunities to get together and talk as well. So Harrison, do you want to give us a little bit of information? You got just a couple of minutes here, if you would please, to talk about what church co plus op, or if I'm saying that wrong, you can correct me. Go ahead.
Awesome. I hope you guys can hear me well. We are the church co-op. Co plus op sounds cooler, arguably. I do wish our COO was supposed to be in on this meeting. Unfortunately, he got pulled away, so you guys got stuck with me. But I'm one of the relationship managers for us. We're a group purchasing organization, so I know a lot of you guys are probably affiliated with GPOs or very familiar with GPOs, so I'll keep it brief. But we're a nonprofit. That's one thing that separates us from a lot of other GPOs, is that we're not splitting discounts with you guys to take rebate money. We're trying to give you guys the best deal possible. The way that we do that is we connect churches and nonprofits with trusted and vetted vendors. We have about 37 right now. We're working to add more. So in the next year, we'll probably have over 40. There you go. James has one of our magazines too. That is another one of our ministries, is we have a magazine that we send out quarterly, and that'll have articles in it, some that are related to vendors, some that are completely different from vendors. And yeah, there you go, James. And we also do a conference every year that is a one-day conference. And we missed it last year, but this year we're going to be celebrating our 35th anniversary. So it'll be a big deal for us. There'll be around 1,000 people there, from facilities managers to administrative assistants to business managers from churches, all there to fellowship. And we have a lot of breakout sessions where there's a lot of education educational things. And that happens in Spring, Texas, which is around where we're located. I'm almost done. One of the biggest things that we do offer is I'm pretty sure we have the greatest Sherwin-Williams program out of any GPO. So we get a minimum of 35% off all paint and paint supplies from Sherwin-Williams. And that doesn't just apply to your church. That also applies to any of your employees or church members' homes. So I know our COO just moved into a new house and they had to do some painting, and he saved around $90 just on the paint that he had to buy himself. So on a larger scale, that really adds up quickly as far as the money that you guys can save with us. The first year is free to be a member of the co-op. And then after that, depending on the size of your church, it's either $50, $75, or $100 a year to be a member. And that's really it. Like I said, I know a lot of you guys are probably already affiliated with GPOs. We just want to be an additional resource. Last thing that I want to do is tell you guys not to use somebody that you like using. But if, you know, it comes a time where you don't know who to use, you can reach out to me and I'll get you connected with somebody. And that's kind of how we work. I might have taken up too much time, but that's all that I got.
Oh, that's perfect, Harrison. Thank you so much. And everybody, just remember, we do have business members. We're happy to have them. Those business members do help sponsor our events as well. And these really are here to be resources for you, for the church. So again, more opportunities, as Harrison said, for us to be able to steward the resources that God has given us. So please, if you haven't already, take a look at our business members on the website and see if you can avail yourself of any of those opportunities. So our next roundtable is currently scheduled for October 10th, I believe. That's Aaron can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was October 10th. Thanks, Aaron, for all that you do to help coordinate us and get everybody registered and get our Zoom link up and running, and to be here to just support us. We're really grateful for that. And I will ask, did you have something else, James, before we close out?
Yeah, that date you said, you realize that's during CFX. That's where you, myself, Homer,
Oh,
all of us will be out of pocket. So,
well, we'll revisit that, but
to
right now
know,
that's
yeah.
what it's scheduled for.
Yeah, thanks, James. I'll make a note of that. I was just going with the second Tuesday, so we'll look at rescheduling another.
May have to adjust. Okay. Thank you, James. See, you know our calendars better than I do right now. So I will be in Texas. Awesome. All right. Mr. Howell, our Director of Education, if you would please.
Your servants. Thank you that they're willing to come together and share their experience and share their love with each other. Be with those who are on this call, be with those who could not make it today, and guide us to do your will, Father, and to serve our churches in the way that you want us to serve them. Go with us now in peace and in your grace. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.